I love teachers. My mom is still a lifelong educator, but I'm just saying there is a lot of inequity in the teaching and education sector. Calling all you teachers out there, this is why you should start writing grants, because it is that back pocket skill that you always want to have. Some people, like my mother, who is a lifelong educator, she told me years ago to get a teaching degree to have a back pocket skill. Well, I didn't quite do that. Instead, I went into writing grants. And let me tell you, that has been the best back pocket skill that I could ever have. Hi, my name is Holly Rustic, and I'm the owner and creator of the Freelance Grant Writer Academy and the Grant Professional Mentorship. We help aspiring and seasoned grant writers replace their full-time income on part-time hours working from home. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about this. So as I mentioned, my mom, she's been a lifelong educator. She teaches teachers, all of that, works at a university. She's taught in the classroom for over 30 years. And she's told me decades ago to get this. And while I actually did have a job teaching, I taught fourth grade in Kuwait and sixth grade in Kuwait. Fourth grade was all just elementary. And then sixth grade, I actually taught social studies and English. And then I'd also taught at the university level. Now, let me tell you, I never had a teaching degree. Right? So when you teach internationally, sometimes they waive those types of things as long as you have a bachelor's degree. At the time, I only had a bachelor's degree. And as you know, when you teach at a university, you don't necessarily need a teaching degree. You need usually at least a master's, sometimes a PhD. And at that time, I just had a master's. But what I did have and what made me more competitive versus other people, even with PhDs, was grant writing skills. And that's how I was able to get a university instructor position where I also wrote grants for the university. So that was something that's what they really hired me to do. But guess how they could pay me? As an instructor. And I only taught 1 or 2 classes per semester while I also mainly focused on writing grants. But that was perfect for me because I didn't have to be in the classroom all of the time doing all of the grading, all of the lesson planning, all of the preparing. I know what you teachers go through, and it is a lot, right? And here's the thing. A lot of people look at the teaching profession as it's great. I know my mother, what she always looked at it for was she had the same holidays as we had when we were in school and we were younger. So she didn't have to work when we were out or find daycare or babysitters or any of that because she was also off at the same time and in the summer. So that worked for her as a single mother, but her revenue was tapped. She never got paid well as a teacher. When I was growing up, we had to move to different locations because she had to follow where there were teaching opportunities because so many people were getting their teacher certification that it was saturated. But you're going to find some certain areas of the world or the country where there is not that and they have a big demand for teachers, but then you are moving sometimes based on where the need is rather than where you want to live. Even without the teaching certification and degree, I was able to teach, as I mentioned, in elementary and in middle school. Let me tell you, I would not want to go back to teaching in elementary or middle school. While I love the kids, I felt like it was more of a classroom management than it was teaching. I also felt like the demand for doing grading, everything else is outside of your actual hours worked. And while, yes, you do get some vacations more than a regular job in the United States, the stress and the need for that vacation are very overwhelming. There's also just a lot of other stressors that I know you teachers deal with, right? I see it time and time again. A lot of teachers are also expected to do other work. Well, at the university, I was expected to do grant writing. I had a reduction in my classroom time. So I had the time to do the grant writing, and that was fair and equitable. Versus a lot of teachers are actually demanded to do a lot of things, teach extracurricular activities after school, do a lot of duties, right, during their breaks, have kids in their classroom during their breaks so they never actually get a break, and just head up different committees, do different things, write grants, right, and they do not get paid anything extra from it. Now, I am not trying to trash the teaching and the education at all. Like, I love teachers. My mom is still a lifelong educator. But I'm just saying there is a lot of inequity in the teaching and education sector. And if I would have followed the advice that I had gotten, get a teaching degree, it's always something to put in your back pocket, and not pursued grant writing, I wouldn't have something better in my pocket right now. For me, having grant experience has helped me get jobs in virtually every sector, not just education. I don't have to move somewhere I don't want to go just because that's where the opportunity is. I am able, and I have worked in many different countries, including the United States, of course, Guam. I've lived in the island of Guam, which is very far from many different places, for the past 11 years. And I've also worked in Kuwait. I've worked in the United Arab Emirates. I've worked in Belgium. I've worked in many different places around the world, Indonesia, right, as I've been able to write grants. This has been phenomenal. So I've been able to go where I wanted to go at different parts in time. And I've been able to work in many different sectors. Just because I have grant writing skills, I was hired in Abu Dhabi to write proposals with the U.S. Air Force Base for a private company. That is not a nonprofit at all. I was writing for-profit contracts, but I had the grant writing experience, and that's what they were interested in. Of course, I've worked at many different nonprofits as a grant writer in-house as well. I've worked at the university, as I mentioned, because of my grant writing skills. I've also been a business owner now for 11 years and have been able to work with, I've been contracted by governments, individuals, nonprofits, for-profits, and nearly every sector to write grants. Grant writing is a skill that crosses all sectors and will always be in my pocket, earning more money than a teacher could and having greater flexibility with where my location and where I want to live, and also when I want to take time off. As I mentioned, my mother's reason for originally going into teaching was to have time off when we had time off. But that didn't always work because sometimes she would have to do after school. She'd have to stay later than us. She had to do committees. She had to do other things. She was still grading. She also had to do professional development sometimes in the summers and so much more to keep up her teacher certification. As a freelance grant writer, I have been able to make it so I can take off time when my daughter's off time just because of how I can manage my clients and my business. Grant writing is also a growing skill that's going to be around until after I'm gone. It is not the most current AI job, tech job, sexy, trending job. I'm okay with that. I'm actually very good with that because what that means to me is it will not be an obsolete job. That is worth having in my pocket. So if you're a teacher out there, I commend you at all of the work that you do. I know how hard it is. I also know a lot of you teachers out there are looking for ways to transition out of teaching. And you may want something for retirement, just to change up the scenery, etc. And moving after you get a teaching certification is hard, right, to another sector or another type of job. Grant writing is a skill that will be able to launch you out of teaching if that is something you're interested in, or just give you a back pocket skill that you can always use. Inside the Freelance Grant Writer Academy, we teach you the skills of grant writing. And we also teach you the skills of business acumen on how to run a grant writing company, even if you just want one client or if you want to do a full out agency. So this is a skill that you can learn, and we have a formulaic process to teach you. Actually, within 30 days, you can learn how to write our master grant template. So be sure to check it out at grantwritingandfunding.com/academy.